I still remember the exact sound my car made when the brake pedal went soft under my foot. A useless, hollow push, like stepping on wet cardboard. And even now that sound can wake me out of a dead sleep. My name is Evelyn Mercer. I'm 31. And until last autumn, I would have told you, without hesitation, that my older sister Claire was the one person in the world who would never let anything happen to me. If you're watching from somewhere that still believes family always means safety, stay with me, because this story burned that belief out of me for good. I wasn't speeding that night. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't careless. I was driving home. From a late fundraising meeting in Richmond, taking the same road I had driven for years along the edge of the James River, a route so familiar I could have followed it blindfolded. The weather was clean, the traffic light, and I remember thinking about nothing more dramatic than whether I had enough milk for coffee the next morning. Then I came down the long bend past the old stone church, saw the red light ahead, pressed the brake, and felt nothing. Not resistance, not slowing, nothing. There was 1 second of disbelief. 1 second where my brain refused to understand that the car was still accelerating, and then the world turned violent. I yanked the handbrake, clipped the curb, swerved to avoid a delivery van, and slammed sideways into an iron fence hard enough to fold the passenger door inward like paper. People always ask whether I thought I was going to die. The truth is, stranger, I thought with absolute clarity, Claire is going to blame me for this. That was the last thought I had before the windshield burst white and the sound of shattering metal swallowed everything. When I woke up, there was a tube in my chest, a brace on my shoulder, bruising so deep it looked black under the hospital. Lights, and a nurse named Marissa telling me to stay still because I had 3 cracked ribs, internal bleeding that had nearly become something worse, and a concussion that made time feel slippery. I kept asking for my sister because she was listed as my emergency contact, because after our mother died, it had simply become understood that Claire would handle everything, because for most of my life she had. She was 8 years older than me, sharp where I was trusting, social where I was private, and everyone in our circle had always described her with the same words: dependable, composed, generous. She'd raised money for children's hospitals, chaired museum events, remembered birthdays, sent flowers, signed cards, took calls. She knew exactly how to look like a good woman under good lighting. But on the first morning after my crash, she did not rush into my room in tears or clutch my hand or ask whether I was frightened. She arrived in a cream wool coat that still had rainwater on the shoulders, kissed my forehead without touching my face, and asked the attending physician, before she asked me anything, whether my injuries would affect competency, prolonged work capacity, and financial decision-making. I was still fogged with pain medication, but I remember the way those words seemed to hang in the air. Competency, financial decision-making. I remember Marissa glancing up from my chart. I remember Claire smiling too quickly when she saw me noticing. She told me not to worry, that she was only trying to protect me, that after trauma hospitals were full of paperwork traps, that she would manage anything stressful until I was better. Then she leaned close and said, softly enough that the doctor couldn't hear, "Please don't make this harder than it already is." It was such an odd thing to say to someone who had just survived a crash that I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Over the next 2 days, she came and went in short, efficient visits. She brought no overnight bag, no book, no sign she intended to stay. She asked the nurses when I might be discharged, whether I had signed any forms, whether I'd spoken to the executor of our grandfather's estate, and whether my laptop had been recovered from the car. Every question landed a little too neatly in the same territory: money, access, timing. By the 3rd day, the fog in my head had thinned enough for memory to start rearranging itself, and that was when the first cold line of fear moved through me. 3 nights before the crash, Claire and her husband Daniel had come to my townhouse in Georgetown for dinner because they were in the area. Claire had asked with unusual enthusiasm whether I was still planning to petition for early release of my trust on my 32nd birthday. Our grandfather had set up a $2 million fund for the 2 of us after he sold his logistics company, half to Claire at 35, half to me at 32. But my portion was protected by language designed to keep it in my sole control, unless I was deceased or declared medically incapable of managing it. At the time, I thought Claire's interest came from sisterly curiosity. Now, lying in a hospital bed with a drain in my side, I remembered something else. After dessert, she had gone back out to the driveway alone, saying she'd left a gift in her car. She was gone longer than made sense. When she returned, she was smiling too brightly and holding a bottle of wine we never opened. That memory sat inside me like broken glass. I said nothing until Marissa came in that evening to check the dressing near my ribs, and when she asked if I wanted the television on, I heard myself say, "Can brake lines fail all at once?" She paused. Not enough to be obvious to anyone else, but enough. Then she said carefully that the police had requested a mechanical report because the responding officer had noted the road was dry, the tires were good, and my skid pattern didn't match driver error. My whole body went cold. The report came the next afternoon. A detective from the traffic crimes unit spoke in that maddeningly calm voice officials use when they know your life is about to split open. The rear brake line had been cut cleanly. Not corroded, not damaged in impact, cut. The car had been parked outside my house. No signs of random vandalism, no theft attempt, no missing items. He asked who had access. I gave him the short list: valet garage staff, my cleaner, my neighbor with the spare key, and my sister, who had borrowed my house key that week because she said a courier might need to leave a package for me if I was late from work. Saying it aloud made me nauseous. The detective didn't react, but his pen slowed. That night, Claire called instead of visiting. Her voice was warm, almost syrupy. She said she'd heard the police were asking silly questions, that accidents made everyone dramatic, that I needed to be careful about stress because head injuries could distort memory. Then she said, "You know, if this turns into some scandal, it will destroy the family completely. Not her marriage, not my sense of safety, the family image." That was the moment the last of my denial gave way. I contacted Thomas Bell, the estate attorney who had known our grandfather for 20 years, and asked for a copy of the trust provisions. He came to the hospital himself. He was the kind of man who ironed grief into his voice until it sounded like procedure, but when he read the recent email Claire had sent his office, asking what documentation would be required if I became incapacitated for an extended neurological recovery, even he looked shaken. She had sent it the morning after my crash, before she knew whether I would fully wake up. Thomas advised me not to confront her yet. The detective said the same. Quietly, while Claire told relatives that I was exhausted and emotionally volatile, I moved to a private rehab suite under a temporary alias, and for the first time in my life, I let people protect me from my own sister. The investigation moved quickly after that. Security footage from a townhouse across the street showed Claire near my car the night of the dinner, crouched beside the rear wheel for almost 90 seconds. Daniel's failing investment group had racked up debt I hadn't known about. A bridge loan was due in 6 weeks. Their accounts were overdrawn. There were calls between Claire and an insurance broker about policies she had no reason to discuss, unless she believed she would soon be handling my affairs. Every new fact made the old memories uglier. Claire teaching me to tie my school tie before assembly. Claire sitting beside me at our mother's funeral, pressing my hand. Claire telling me when I was 16 and heartbroken for the first time that no man would ever hurt me if she could help it. I grieved that version of her while the evidence buried the one standing in front of me. A month later came the Harrington Winter Gala at the Langham in London, a transatlantic charity event Claire had spent all year boasting about. The kind of room where women in silver gowns discuss philanthropy over champagne while secretly measuring everyone else's collapse. She believed I was still in recovery and too fragile to appear in public. She was wrong. Thomas thought it was a mistake for me to go. Marissa, who by then had become something closer to a friend than a nurse, said that if I did go, I needed to decide whether